Hello, welcome to the channel. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be my cheery self. You've seen the title, you can see what's on the screen. It's going to be a bit of a dark topic, but I'm seeing too much of this happen and people not realise it's happening. So, in order, like, if we use the old trope of being an alcoholic or a drug addict, you can only fix a problem when you identify that it exists. So if the problem doesn't exist, how can you fix it? If you don't know it's broken, how can you fix it? Right? So this video is, so if I ever reference my sex abuse video, this is that video. So hopefully you've come from one of my videos where I say I've spoken about this, go and check my video out. This is what this video is, right? Because I'm seeing some messed up stuff in libs of TikToks, compilations that Big Nick's making. I'm seeing a lot of stuff that's borderline sexual abuse, and I've seen stuff that is sexual abuse prior that I haven't covered on the channel that I'll delve into a little bit, and I'll explain why I haven't covered it on my channel in this video. But so sexual abuse is when a person is sexually abused. That's obvious, right? But they don't have to be forced. They can be tricked. And who is the easiest age demographic to fool? Is it old women? Is it old men? Or is it little kids? Think about it. Who are the most gullible humans that you know? I bet their age is in a single figure. Yeah. They might not understand what's happening, and they might not know that it's abuse or that it's wrong, because they're children. They might be afraid to tell someone, and it can happen anywhere, in person or online. Okay? It's never a child's fault that they were sexually abused, because children don't know what's happening. They don't know what's going on. So if anybody tries to say that consent was involved or that it was the child's own stupid fault for doing it, no. It's completely on the perpetrator for abusing their knowledge and their experience of the world to manipulate that gullible, innocent child, right? So there's two types of sexual abuse. There's two types. Everybody knows about the contact version, which is like touching and feeling and penetration and all that horrible stuff. Everybody knows about that, right? But there's also non-contact stuff. This is like grooming and sending them messages online and stuff like that. It's just, there's a lot of it. So contact abuse is where the abuser makes physical contact with the child. It includes, but is not limited to, sexual touching of any part of the child's body, whether they're clothed or not. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're fully covered up. They could be wearing a 6-inch lead poncho, and if you try and touch a little girl's boobs, that's sexual abuse. Even if you try to touch it through that lead, you shouldn't be doing it. It's wrong. It's wrong to do it. They're an innocent little child. They're not a sexual being, so they shouldn't be sexualized, right? And then penetrate. Any form of penetration, it's not acceptable. The only time a child should be penetrated, right, is if they're going for a medical procedure. So if a little girl has something wrong with her vagina and she needs to go and see a specialist child gynecologist, right? Or if a little boy's got something with like his rectum, something like that. That is the only time a child should be penetrated, and they should be penetrated by a surgeon using an implement, not a body part, right? That is the only time. If anybody else penetrates a child under any other circumstances, they are a fucking monster and they need throwing in a prison cell to rot. That's where they need to go. Right? Maps aren't nice people. If you want to start calling them maps, I'm going to start stigmatizing the word map. A map is a nonce to all my UK viewers. Right? Forcing a child to take part in sexual activities. Now, sexual activities, right? Sexual activities can be walking down a street with loads of people at a kink parade. Like at a pride parade with loads of people in assless chaps with titties hanging out. That is a sexual activity. So if you make your child go to pride with you, that is sexual abuse. If your child does not want to go and you take them, that is sexual abuse. Because conversely, if you took all of those people in that parade, right, and Thanos'd and turned them heterosexual, I know it's not possible, but if they, for the sake of argument, if they were heterosexual for the moment, that's still sexual abuse. It's got nothing to do with pride. It's got nothing to do with homosexuality. It's to do with the acts that you are portraying in public in front of children. If I was there and I was walking around in assless chaps with my shirt off with pierced nipples and that, dressed like a fucking biker with a moustache like Freddie Mercury, right? It wouldn't make a difference if I was gay or straight. That is still something a child shouldn't see. Do you see what I'm saying? If you take a naked woman walking down the street with just little band-aids on her nipples in a thong, and she's twerking, right? That's a sexual activity, is it not? Her sexuality has nothing to do with it. She could be gay, straight, bi, or asexual. She could want everything, nothing, or just selected parts. She's performing a sexual act in front of a child. That's sexual abuse. Please understand what it is. And I want you guys, if you see this, if you see somebody sexually abusing a child, call them out on it. Because you owe it to the child. You owe it to the child to protect them. But yeah, let's keep going. Making a child undress or touch somebody else, like holding a stripper's hand. This is some of the footage that I didn't show on the channel because I didn't want to impose the wraths of the YouTube gods. And I couldn't do it morally. I couldn't do it morally. Because making a child hold a stripper's hand while the stripper parades up and down, to me, is sexual abuse. Right? It is. It's sexual abuse. But if we go into the non-contact abuse, right? Making, viewing, or distributing child abuse images or videos, forcing a child to take part in sexual activities or conversation online through a smartphone. So I saw footage on the podcast of the Lotus Eaters. I saw footage of a trans woman, so a man, with a fake butt and fake boobs in like a skimpy little G-string with like band-aids on her nipples, his fake boob nipples. What a world we live in. And they had hold of a little girl's hand, and that little girl came up to the dude's like hip. So he had heels on. She was about his hip height. She was about 3 foot tall. She must have been below 8. I've never seen a child below 8 taller than that. So she must have been around about 8 years old, give or take, right? And they were parading up and down, and there was somebody filming it, right? So that was the scenario. A stripper exposing himself in a sexual way, and there was a little girl holding his hand, and he was walking up and down with her, right? So a child was forced to take part in a sexual activity, because if a strip show isn't a sexual activity, you are a fucking degenerate and you need to learn what sexual activity means, right? If you go to a strip club, that is a sexual place. If you don't go there for sexual reasons, you go to a normal bar, right? Making a child undress or touch someone else. They were forced to hold a stripper's hand, right? They were made to hold a stripper's hand. And then this is the section that made me think about it. If the woman, because it was a woman, Kathleen, who filmed it. So the woman filmed it. She's guilty of making, viewing, and distributing child abuse images or videos. Right? She's guilty of that. Then I saw it on the podcast of the Lotus Eaters. So the podcast of the Lotus Eaters are now liable for distributing child sex images or videos. Yes? Are you following me? Right? Now, I've inadvertently committed a fucking crime because I'm guilty of viewing child abuse images or videos. I'm guilty of viewing that on YouTube. YouTube has got child abuse images on it. It's got effectively what is like weird paedophile fantasies on it. And this is not okay. This is not okay, right? So, I'm going, woosah. It's always the kids, man. It's always the kids. Non-contact abuse is where child is abused without being touched by the abuser, right? This is the stuff that's common. This is like, we know if we see a man in the street groping a child, we know that's wrong. It's intrinsic. Get off them. We know that straight away. But the subtle stuff, sometimes it's hard to differentiate between somebody being an abuser or just being creepy, because there's a fine line between being an abuser and being creepy. There's a very fine line. So exposing or flashing. So anybody who exposes himself and flashes in public in front of children is committing child sex abuse. So if you take your child to a pride show, like a pride parade, and all of the normal gays walk past, do you know, there's the gays that just dress like people. Do you know, the people that are just gay? The people that are just gay. All the normal gays walk past. And then all the queer people come. And then all the queer people are the ones that are like all dolled up in makeup, and they're like, being gay is their entire identity. So their entire identity is based on their sexual preference. So they are inherently sexual in pretty much everything they do. So when the pride parade happens, now there's loads of kink involved. So there's people on all fours dressed as dogs, crawling around. There's people with their asses hanging out. There's people with their boobs hanging out with just little band-aids on them. There's people twerking in thongs. And there's children stood just on the other side of the barrier watching this unfold live. That is exposing and flashing. right? Taking a child to a strip club is showing them pornography because it's softcore pornography. The difference between softcore and hardcore pornography is hardcore pornography contains penetration. So if there's women naked dancing on a stage, that's softcore porn. And then if the man comes out and fucks one of them, then it's hardcore porn. But it was still softcore just because there was titties out. So showing a child that is child sex abuse. You shouldn't be doing it, right? Exposing them to sexual acts. That's what kink parades are. That's what the pride kink parades are. It's all just people being depraved doing sexual things in the street. Making them masturbate goes without saying, but that's fucking still, people still know that's wrong, so that doesn't get overlooked. Forcing a child to make, view or share child abuse images online. So when there's people out there talking to their children about their gender and stuff, and they're trying to confuse them about sexual topics, and then they share it online, that's child sexual abuse. That's what it is. It's literally categorized as it. These people are like, they're committing crimes and then putting themselves on the internet. I don't get it. I really don't get it. And then back to the making, viewing and distributing it. Like, people need to be aware of this. People need to be aware of this. What's in my hair there? What the hell is this? Bit of fluff. It's a bloody dog. But yeah, people need to be aware of this, because if you see stuff like this, you need to call this out. You need to call this out. When I first started doing my Libs of TikTok video, I did it initially because I was concerned with how extreme the far left was getting with a lot of their ideas. So I thought, right, I'm quite central myself. If anything, I'm a little bit left. So hopefully I can try and get in there and rationalise it, and then revert it back to you guys to let you tell me what you think in the comments, and try and get a discussion started, because if we don't talk, we're going to fight. So I thought I'd do that as the genesis of some Libs of TikTok, some madness from Libs of TikTok. But now, six episodes in, about to make the 7th, I'm noticing a trend that a lot of this affects kids more than it affects adults. So I had to make this so that I've got a reference point to it. When I say, you want to see what child sex abuse is, I've made a video on it. This categorises the bulk of it. Obviously, there'll be nuances to it, and there'll be a few areas that I haven't covered, but for the most part, I'm seeing a lot of this on Libs of TikTok, and I'm not happy about it. Stay strong, learn daily. Peace.